Hi everyone, we are Kadir and James from Google, working on the web platform and specifically baseline features and webstatus.dev. So let me take a step back a little bit and tell you a little bit about why we are doing what we are doing and what exactly we've been doing before we get to the interesting and new part. The main reason why we actually got into this is it's shown in this survey. The web platform is not like any other platform out there. Usually you have one vendor shipping a platform. Even if you have multiple vendors contributing to something, it's still one vendor shipping one platform. The web is nothing like that. We have at least 3 different implementations, 3 independent implementations, at least 3, and even more vendors shipping various versions of those implementations with various feature sets. And those implementations are not fully interoperable. And that leads to issues for developers. So a feature might work in one browser, but not be available in another browser, or if it's available, it might have major interoperability issues, and so might not be usable in production. And this is something that developers have been telling us about for a long time. So whatever survey we run about developer satisfaction, about issues that people have, top developer needs, what comes up is interoperability. People want to basically target the platform and know that the code that they've written will actually work across all the browsers that they are targeting. And so you can see in this one, the top, 4 of the top 6 issues here are about making things work across browsers and keeping up with those changes as they land on the platform. And there are 2 related issues here. So one issue is that features are often unavailable across browsers, or if they are available, they come sometimes with major interoperability issues, and that means they can't be used in production, which reduces our impact, the impact that we have with actually shipping those features. And the second related issue is the developers are often unclear as to what is available, and that again reduces the impact that we have with the features, because just shipping it is not enough. Developers also need to be aware, and because they're not, they deem the platform less powerful than it actually is, which is really unfortunate. That's why a couple of years ago, we founded the WebDX community group, a web developer experience community group. And this is with all major browsers contributing to it, and others in the ecosystem. And the goal here is to address exactly those 2 issues. One, that developers don't necessarily know what is available, and on the other hand, that implementations land with interoperability issues. And part of that obviously is already addressed with the interop process, which is closing today, by the way. So if you still want to get your interop issues in, so today, or proposals in, today is the last day for that. But the other part's about knowing what developers want to have as part of the platform, and then making sure that they are aware of what's part of the platform. That's what we are doing in the WebDX community group. And one thing that came out of the WebDX community group is baseline. So I think I mentioned baseline here last year already, and it's evolved a little bit. So for one, baseline features are features that work across all major browsers without any major interoperability issues. So as a developer, if you're targeting or if you're using a baseline feature, you can be sure that the interoperability of it is at a level that where we have made an editorial decision to say, like, this works. You can rely on it as a web developer. But of course, there are differences in what developers are comfortable with in terms of reach. So that's why since last year, we've updated baseline to add that nuance. So if a feature becomes available across all major browsers, it's a newly available baseline feature, which means that all major browsers are supporting it, but not going back. So it might be that it's at the point where the last browser has added support for the feature. That's a baseline feature. That's a newly available baseline feature. And then it gets this blue check mark. And after 2.5 years, the feature will reach about 95% of all web platform users out there. So at that point, we consider that feature a widely available baseline feature. So that's a bit of a proxy. That time proxy there is 2.5 years, but it roughly maps out to about 95% at least, and usually a little bit higher than that. You can already see these things on MDN and Can I Use. So when you go there, you will see on more and more pages these days, you will see the banner on top of the page that will tell you whether it is a baseline feature and since when. And then there is another thing that we've come up with since last year, which is called the baseline year. So we combine all of those things that came out as newly available baseline features within 1 year, and we call that the baseline, in this case, for example, baseline 24. So baseline 24 is all the features that became baseline within 1 year. And that makes it really easy then to compare. What does baseline 23 look like compared to baseline 24? And it's not, the web is not versioned, but this makes it a little bit easier to actually compare from 1 year to the next. As a web developer, what can you expect now to be able to use? And instead of having to keep up with releases that come out every 2 weeks or so, you might want to check in once a year and see what's available in baseline, which is the web platform. So that's something that we've been doing since last year. But all of this baseline is actually based on web features. And so web features is a project that we started last year to map all 15,000 very granular browser compat data keys, like sub-features, to about 1,500 higher level web platform features. So the way this works is like if you go to caniuse.com, today you get high-level features that are the way that developers think about them. So somebody curated that list. It's not the full platform, but it's how developers think about those features. But then when you go to MDN, for example, you get very granular compatibility data. And there was nothing to combine those things. So that's what we've started doing. So we've taken those very granular things and we're combining them to higher level features that are on the level of the granularity of Can I Use. To give you more of an example for this, here we have the dialog element, and the dialog element has HTML, CSS, and JS components. So the web is a hierarchy of features, and larger features are made up of those smaller sub-features. And that's what web features is supposed to actually do, is it combines all of them, and then it gives them a name. As you know, naming is one of the two hard things. So we're just doing that 1,500 times over. Not getting there. One interesting thing that came out of this, and something that we had somewhat anticipated, but it's still a pretty big challenge, is that features evolve over time. So there are features that, if you just think of something like arrays, they've been part of the platform since almost the beginning, for more than 20 years. But if you look at arrays over time, we've kept adding new features to them. So then there is a question, are JavaScript arrays baseline? Is that a baseline feature? It's really hard to answer. Obviously, the original implementation is, but what about the latest methods that have been added? Are those part of array? So those questions have come up, and it's not just with arrays. It's not just in JavaScript. You have the same thing with CSS, where you keep adding things afterwards. For example, grid. So you have grid when it came out, I think in 2017 or so. It didn't have subgrid, at least not outside of Mozilla. I think Firefox maybe had it, but I'm not exactly sure whether it was shipped. But subgrid became baseline last year. And so right now we have two features here. We have subgrid and grid. But in maybe 10 years from now, I don't think developers will care that they came out at different times. So at that point, they will probably think about grid as obviously including subgrid. It's not an extra feature, but right now it has to be. So we came up with this thing where we think that features, when they originally come out, they have birth dates and they have a certain scope. So that's what we consider the original date for a feature, and then we evolve that. So as features, as more sub-features are added, we add those things as additional things with separate birth dates, so that the original feature doesn't change its baseline status. That can be a little bit confusing, but I think, or we think that this is how developers actually think about the platform. They think that baseline grid is baseline, but subgrid is, or grid is widely available in baseline, and subgrid is newly available. And as I said, we also think that those things are going to be merged over time. We haven't done that yet, but that is pretty much what we can see, is that people stop thinking about these things after a while as independent features. And this feature set, web features, we've already put it to good use. So this is something that we've announced earlier this year. It's a collaboration with Akamai RUM Archive. So this is for the very first time on the web platform. You can actually tell what percentage of the web user audience out there you can reach with a version of baseline, and what new features are available in that version of baseline. So for example, in this case, I might decide that I want to target baseline 24, but that means I have to give up on 25% of my audience, or of the general audience rather. This is not for a specific site, this is for all web users. But if I do that, I get access to erase from async, and I get popover, and I get AVIF. So that's something that I can tell now by going to RUM Archive, and you can already use this today. There are more places where we've started using web features, and I'll let James talk about that now, which is the star of the show.
Thank you. Before I get started, I want to ask that you think about what information do you use to describe the state of the web platform? And what information do you see that is maybe missing, or what helps you track it even better? Now, with that in mind, keep that in mind, and I'll start talking about the slides now. So like Kadir said earlier, this all comes from the web feature IDs that he showed in the web features repository. And this is an application of it inside of webstatus.dev. Webstatus.dev uses those web feature IDs to connect tag data and provide a comprehensive overview of the platform. This allows us to see a big picture while also drilling down to the granular feature level information. For example, feature developers have tagged the web platform test in WPT with web feature IDs, and that allows us to see the web platform test scores per feature for each feature ID on this homepage. And while we're talking about the homepage, let's also talk about what's the default list. So when you first visit webstatus.dev, it is listed by default, or sorted by default by the features that have recently reached newly available status. So that allows you to see, allows you to keep up to date when you first visit the page. Oh, this is what recently hit baseline or not. And besides that, we can do various other sorting and filtering on webstatus.dev as well. For example, you can see here, you can filter down to see which features are in limited availability state, but are also available in Chrome. You'll see that query running there. And then once you click on a particular feature, you can drill down, like I said earlier. You can see, for example, you can see availability data, the baseline status, and as well as web platform test scores over time. So you can see how it is trending over time, which is great to tell about the implementation quality of a feature as well. Now, Kadir also mentioned earlier that we're talking about the BCD keys. We are currently, and also you maybe saw the top number on websites.dev, we're only showing 615 features. And we know that's a good start, but that's not the complete picture. Now those BCD keys and we're mapping those BCD keys to features in the web features repository, and each feature lists those BCD keys in that compact features section that Kadir showed earlier. And right now we have mapped about 42% of those so far. And we have a goal to map the remaining 58% by the end of the year. So once those BCD keys are mapped, it'll be even easier for feature developers to connect their features to web platform tests or even other sources as well. So when, like I said earlier, when I gave you that question, please let us know if there are any other suggestions that you have in mind for sources that would give us a better picture of the web platform as well. And let's talk about some upcoming features as well. For websites.dev, we're also going to go beyond tracking availability and implementation. We'll also be looking to understand how the features are actually being used. So that's why we're adding use counters to websites.dev. This is just a mock-up, but this will offer a more nuanced understanding of how features are being adopted in the real world. And by tracking usage trends, we can identify popular features or provide a signal that there may be potential barriers for adoption, for example. We're also working on providing a high-level platform data, such as overall feature count for each browser. And this will allow us to compare progress across different browsers and identify areas where collaboration may be needed. And by tracking this data over time, we can gain insights into trends such as time to baseline. And these trends can be a catalyst for investigations that identify opportunities to accelerate the adoption of features, which will ultimately improve interoperability across the web. With that, I want to open up for discussions.
Yeah, I mean, some of the questions that we have around the development of this, as we move forward with the web platform dashboard, there are certain questions that have come up. So one, for example, is web platform tests. How do we score these tests? It turns out that the tests themselves are somewhat unevenly distributed. So some features have very few tests, other features have a lot of tests, and sometimes the tests cover the core part of a feature. Sometimes they only cover edge cases and only maybe bugs that have been found previously. So getting to 100% on web platform tests means different things for different features. And so we are wondering about, like, how do we actually then display those things in a meaningful way on the web platform dashboard for people to make sense of it. There are other questions that we have too. Right now, for the most part, we're backfilling, which means that the features that we're adding to the web platform dashboard have already been around. And in almost all cases, they already have at least one implementation, usually multiple implementations. But we don't want to be backfilling forever. So at some point, hopefully at the end of this year, we'll be done with that. And at that point, we want to make sure that features show up on the web platform dashboard when they're actually useful to people working on the web platform. So the question then is, how early do we do that? And do we do that the moment we ship something in the first browser? Do we do that when we actually start a spec for something, maybe the explainer? So we've discussed this a little bit in the past, and there are up and downsides, so I'd like to discuss this a little bit more and see what people here think. So if you do it early, for example, we could get an identifier for a feature, which means that in all the places we talk about the feature, it will be clear what exactly are we talking about. But of course, we also know that early in the process, the scope of something can still change considerably, and then the original name might not actually be appropriate anymore. What if you use a vendor position to give a statement on a specific feature, but then the scope of the feature changes, the name stays the same, and now the vendor position is for previous version of that? It can be a little bit confusing, but we don't want to wait too late or too long, because that makes it's useful to have a place where you can see all the information available about a specific feature, also during the implementation process. So yeah, those are some of the questions. We also have some others that we would like to hear about, where we know that the web platform dashboard isn't complete at this point. So as James already mentioned, we'd really like to hear about what other data sources are out there that would make sense to connect to web features. So we could then show them on the web platform dashboard, either as an overview or in the individual feature page. So I just mentioned vendor positions, for example. That's currently something that we don't have on the dashboard, but that we are discussing. And maybe there are other data sources that would actually make sense. What are the features we should add? So that's not web platform features, because for web platform features, we want to make sure that all of them are represented. And I know it's a little tricky to talk about this. So we're talking here about use cases for the web platform dashboard, or functionality of the web platform dashboard. So those are things that we're interested in. And that's what we would like to talk about now. So if people have thoughts, but also afterwards, if you want to continue this conversation, you can do that over in complexity right after here behind us, right after the session, as there's a coffee break, so we can continue that conversation in there. But I saw that there was already multiple. Okay.
Got a couple of questions from the audience. Alex first.
Hey, thanks for the update. One of the things that we've lost, certainly from the Microsoft side over the years, is we used to run a project called the What We Want, which tried to close the loop, right? Give developers a way to vote for things. And that was put up after there was a user voice system, which Microsoft ran, which I thought was pretty good, because developers could actually vote for things. It seems as though we're kind of missing a focal point, and this is sort of setting up to be a focal point for conversation around compatibility. Have you developed, or are you thinking about features that would allow developers to self-identify and then potentially express their interest in potential features? Thanks.
That's a really good question. So it's currently not part of the feature set of the web platform dashboard, but it is actually something that we have started to think about. As you mentioned already, there are some challenges around that, like how do you actually get that feedback without bias in one direction or the other? How do you make sure that it is actually web developers and representative of the web developer audience? How do you make sure that the voting is comparable between features? There are lots and lots of challenges with that. I think that actually makes a lot of sense, because we do want to have basically all the data that you can have on a feature represented on the details page of that feature on the web platform dashboard. So I think it's definitely something that should be represented on the web platform dashboard. But one thing we have also not talked about so much is that we want to have as little information as possible on the dashboard itself. So that's something that we need to figure out. Like for example, with the web platform tests, we're not maintaining that within the dashboard. That's data that's somewhere else that's tagged with the web feature IDs, with the names, and we get to just pull that in. So it might be one more thing that we can pull in from another source maybe. And I do think it would make a great addition to the web platform dashboard to show developer interest, and maybe also compare developer interest between features. One thing that we are already looking into is making it clear what came out of the big developer surveys that we are running in the WebDX CG, which is the state of CSS, the state of HTML, state of JS. All those surveys, they have results in like what developers actually want in terms of interoperability and missing features. And currently that is not something that's on a dashboard, but we would like to make that visible. So I think in terms of signals, more signals from developers would definitely make sense.
It's funny, same area, but slightly different dimension of that is having a way, like with this great tagging, right? Like, you know, I do a lot of stuff on PWA. We have like a Google group that's, you know, pretty low engagement for, you know, public, for people to like say what they might want, or if they're having problems. I think I'm interested in the idea of this also being an opportunity for developers to say, oh, I rely on this feature. I'm going to throw my email in here, and then we are able to reach out to them. Maybe we say, hey, we're making a new mode of this, and it's really cool, FYI, and that's, you know, and then maybe we can get some external partners to try stuff out easier that way. Or, you know, maybe there's a breaking change and we need to say, hey, you know, who's needing to work on this? Or maybe not a breaking change, but maybe like, hey, we're changing the behavior. Our metrics say no one uses it this way. So just making sure. So I think there's a couple opportunities there, but at least for me, you know, a big value would be to say, hey, here's a new thing we're making. We think it's valuable. We think your users are going to like it. You know, just letting you know.
Oh, that's something.
I like that idea. Yeah. Kind of a discussion or facilitate the discussions somewhere to store those contacts. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one feature that we were already planning for next year is being able to subscribe to a feature, to a web platform feature. So you'll be notified when that feature becomes available in the next browser and then becomes available across all browsers. That's really, that's something that what you just mentioned, we hadn't really thought about that, but that also makes a lot of sense for developers to register interest in a feature. And it's probably likely that they then also want to hear about changes around that feature. Before it becomes baseline or things that are added to it. Like you can think, for example, of container queries that were the original container queries that were about size, but now we're talking about style container queries and more. So people who are interested in one part are probably interested in the others as well. It might make for good people to reach out to get input from. I think that's a fantastic idea. Thank you.
Both to kind of what Alex and Dan were saying, I think one thing that's kind of worth thinking about and chewing on is like the web we want is a site that exists and has been, I think stale is probably the right word for the past couple of years probably, but it does have some entrenched value as a place that like, it seems like for the, like you were saying, kind of as a having separate like data sources and compiling that in, it seems like the direction that I think the handful of interest from the folks who have talked is like some sort of revival of the web we want or something similar instead of trying to kind of, not instead of, but like avoid reinventing the wheel in the sense of, you know, making some new place where people can ask for something. It seems like that might be an area where we could lean in more on as a collective group. Just kind of commentary more than question, I guess.
No, absolutely. As I said, actually, it might make a lot of sense to do that somewhere else and then pull the results into the web platform dashboard. One of the most challenging aspects of that is just making sure that the results are comparable between features. But that's the challenge of any voting system or any system of signals. So I'm sure we can figure that out. We're actually quite excited about that.
Hey, thanks for the great presentation. I did want to also ask whether do you have thoughts on if the web platform dashboard could help solve things like deprecations or changes that have compat risk?
I think that's a fantastic question too. It turns out that changes to the web platform and deprecations are basically you remove something from. I mean, deprecations themselves are not a problem. It's also a language thing. So when we deprecate things on the web platform, it doesn't really mean anything. There are things that we deprecate and then keep forever. WebSQL itself stayed on the platform for like 15 years. But sometimes we deprecate and then remove right after. And those in particular actually cause a lot of issues for web developers. We know that that's a huge issue. I'm not sure if the web platform dashboard itself is necessarily the best place, because the way we are currently positioning this is that this is for people, for the most part, it's for people working on the platform directly, for platform influencers who want to talk to their audience about how the platform is evolving. So people won't necessarily directly get this information from the dashboard. There might be, I'm thinking that's probably something where you have to actually disseminate and get it in front of them when they need that. That said, it might be that we can use the dashboard to talk to influencers about that, web influencers, who then get to talk to their audience about that. It's definitely something that we need to address also as part of the WebDX. Like what isn't available isn't just about what is coming to the platform. It's also what's leaving and what's changing. And those are, just as a quick aside, I think those are so much more damaging too, because those things become top priorities for developers. Whereas like new features, you can use them, you cannot use them. It's at your own pace. But when it comes to features being removed or changed, you don't have any control over that. So yeah, we've heard from web developers that those are actually some of their biggest issues with changes to the platform. It's definitely worth addressing.
Hey, I had a question. Have you thought about incorporating this into Chromium's dev tools? Like if someone's using a new feature, you could have a link to say, hey, this isn't supported everywhere. Go here for more information on that?
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. I mean, so here is one of the challenges with that, or the reason why we haven't done it yet, because obviously, yes, that would make so much sense. As James has just shown, we've currently compiled about like 42% of the of web features. So there is still a very large set of features that are not mapped. And when you put this into tooling, you would invite like tons of false positives and false negatives for features that we're just not aware of yet. But we're getting there. So by the end of this year, we will have hopefully all of this mapped. And then, yes, getting baseline into tooling is one of our top priorities, because it's one thing to ask developers to go to MDN or go to Canary or go to some place to check out what the status of it is. It's very different when it's part of your tooling, when it's part of your linter, when it's part of the information that you get while you're coding. So it's definitely, yes, we've thought about that. We couldn't do it this year because we needed the mapping. But if you are working on tooling and you would like to integrate with baseline, definitely do come and find us and talk to us, because we're very interested in that.
And last question.
Yeah, when I look at the baseline features, it talks about the feature and whether or not it's supported, and it has like a short 2-line description of what the feature is. But I found that it's kind of hard to really dig in to see what exactly is it. It'd be nice if there was some documentation that linked to the documentation, maybe MDN, or to the spec, like which specs are involved for these, so that you don't have to dig into all the tests and figure out what exactly they're doing.
Yeah. So that's a good point. Right now we do have limited link outs on the feature detail page, but we have thought about like how do we give more information to the person visiting the page. But that's a good point. That is definitely on our roadmap to add more information for the feature detail page. So.
One of the challenges currently is that like MDN is the obvious choice for where you would link out to, but there is not a one-to-one mapping between a feature and an MDN page, because MDN is so much more granular. So we're currently looking into that and how we can actually find the representative page on MDN. And MDN itself is doing that too, because you want to talk about the baseline status of a feature. You don't necessarily care about the baseline status of this very granular feature. You also want to know about the overall feature that this belongs to, what the baseline is. So MDN is also interested in that. So I'm very hopeful that we will be able to link from the web platform dashboard to MDN pages for that. But also it has come up before that it will be good to have specifically demos. And I'm not sure exactly what a good repository for that would be, but if you're aware of like a good repository for demos around web platform features that we could tag with feature IDs, then we could just pull that into the dashboard. So ideally what we want to do is find sources outside of the dashboard that already have these things, and then just tag them. So we then can pull them in and make sure that those things then stay up to date, because that's one of the biggest issues otherwise, and one of the main reasons why we don't want to maintain data in the dashboard itself, is because it goes out of sync. So this way, hopefully, if you can tag things and pull them in, we can make sure that those things are maintained where they are already being worked on, and just avoid that issue altogether. But then the challenge is actually finding those sources where those things are maintained. So for documentation, we know MDN. For actual demos, for good demos that we can link to, that might be another source. So if you have ideas on that, we're definitely interested.
All right, thank you, Kadir and James.
Thank you.